id Software is a pioneering name in gaming, even if the name itself arguably doesn't have the same resonance now as it used to. id Software is associated with some high-profile franchise names in the gaming world, including Wolfenstein 3D, Quake, and Doom. Rage, one of their newer franchises, will have its sequel Rage 2 released soon in the middle of May. Additionally, some prominent game development names also have a history with id Software, including Tom Hall, John Romero, and John Carmack, along with those who have remained with the company since the early 90s, including Kevin Cloud. So what is the noise surrounding this developer? We'll explore more in our video on the full history of id Software. id Software has its origins in the disc magazine company SoftDisc. Disc magazines, for those who are not aware, are electronic magazines designed to be read via computers without usage of the internet. Their prevalence severely dwindled, of course, with the rise of the internet, as difficult as it may seem now to envision the use of a computer without the internet, though they do enjoy niche popularity amongst some. Those who had found id Software got their start working on games to be attached to SoftDisc's disc magazines. Carmack and Hall attracted attention for a remake of Super Mario Bros. 3 that they had produced on PC, replacing Mario with SoftDisc's Dangerous Dave character, also the name of a game developed for MS-DOS and Apple II by Romero. PCs weren't generally designed to handle side-scrolling as the game consoles of their time, but Carmack found a way to make it happen. Dangerous Dave was already moderately popular, and while Nintendo would reject the developer's suggestion of using their port of Super Mario Bros. 3 for PC, they began to attract attention for their work. A man named Scott Miller of Apogee Software had sent fan letters to these developers hoping to attract their attention and initiate discussion on publishing a new game that they would make using a shareware distribution model. Such a project would be the first Commander Keen game, a side-scrolling platformer series whose first release was on MS-DOS in December of 1990. The shareware model was such that games were designed in parts. The first episode of the first Commander Keen game was free, while the latter two were paid purchases. The success of this game convinced these developers to form their own independent game development studio, and that studio would be id Software. After continuing to make Commander Keen games, their next major project would be the shooter Wolfenstein 3D, a first-person shooter starring an American Allied Forces soldier fighting against Nazis. Apogee Software would again publish for Wolfenstein 3D and would release as one trilogy of episodes later, followed by a second prequel trilogy called Nocturnal Missions, following the release of the first trilogy, with the first episode of the first trilogy being released as shareware and the rest of the episodes being mail order. Customers had the option of buying whole trilogies or singular episodes, though id Software later also sold their games in retail packaging at stores by working with other publishers. Wolfenstein 3D was wildly successful upon release, though id Software wasn't sure what to expect of the game regarding commercial performance. Instead, its commercial success far exceeded anyone's expectations, making Wolfenstein 3D a huge moneymaker, and Wolfenstein 3D's legacy is such that it is regarded as a pivotal game for 3D shooting games, with its fast-paced action being a hallmark trait that set the standard for future games within the shooter genre, a trait that also defines the more popular id titles. Not too long after Wolfenstein 3D's release, id Software would work on the first Doom game, which released in December of 1993. The first Doom game features a space marine fighting through legions of demons from hell, and this game was released as a shareware title through id Software itself, with its first of 3 episodes being free. The game's success was even more astronomical than Wolfenstein 3D's was, such that at one point it almost made Bill Gates buy id Software. Doom was also popular as it introduced playing through the main single-player campaign cooperatively through local network, and it also introduced deathmatch mode, which pits competitors against each other. Doom, to reiterate, is the game that introduced deathmatch, which we may take for granted in shooters today. Like Wolfenstein 3D, Doom was wildly successful despite the gore and perceivable offensive imagery invoked within the game. id Software would follow up Doom's release with Doom 2 in 1994. While it was mostly an improvement of the original, it was what fans of the first game wanted, and was also critically and commercially successful. id Software's next major franchise was Quake, the first release of which was in June of 1996. By December of 1999, the first Quake title sold 1.1 million units worldwide. Quake was meant to be a successor to Doom 2 and the Doom franchise, and building upon the expertise honed through working on their past titles, id produced a very worthy game. Through Quake, id would introduce more robust online multiplayer functionality and options, further popularizing online shooters. Ever heard of Team Fortress? Well, it's based on a mod of the first Quake game. Quake would be the series that made id Software for years following the first game's release, and the Quake franchise would see sequels in Quake 2 and Quake 3 Arena in December 1997 and December 1999 respectively, though Quake 2 was in fact originally supposed to be a new IP altogether, foregoing the aesthetic of the first for something more rooted in science fiction. Quake 3 Arena doesn't have a single-player story mode, but was instead designed for multiplayer, though players can fight against bots if they so choose. It was a fixture in esports competitions for years, and while tournaments have moved on to more recent titles, the game still enjoys its own following. id Software would not release any new titles until Doom 3 in 2004, a reboot of the Doom series. It takes place on a research facility on Mars meant to study weapons, biology, and teleportation, and from this is born Doom 3's involved story campaign. The focus on story was intentional from the beginning. The idea of a new Doom title had been floating about within id Software since 2000, a contentious notion upon first suggestion, as some within the company thought that id Software had been revisiting the same properties and gameplay formulas a bit too often. Nevertheless, Doom 3 has sold more than 3.5 million copies by the beginning of 2007. It inspired the release of an expansion pack in 2005 called Doom 3 Resurrection of Evil, and a Doom franchise movie which also released in 2005. Additionally, the game led to the development of novelizations of Doom 3 which were released in 2008, two of which did see releases, while the last one was actually cancelled. The novelizations were written by the writer of the stories for Doom 3 and Resurrection of Evil. What followed next for id Software's releases were a series of mobile phone titles: Doom RPG, Orcs and Elves, and Wolfenstein RPG, all of which were co-developed with Fountainhead Entertainment and enjoyed positive critical reception. The next such mobile title developed with Fountainhead was Doom 2 RPG, which released in 2009, an important year for id Software, as it would mark their acquisition by ZeniMax, the parent company of Bethesda Softworks. John Carmack explained the move at the time by saying that it would enhance id's development pipelines and would help id bypass having to avoid contention amongst different publishing partners about how their games are marketed, having thus far worked with a few publishing companies. It was a move that would maximize their ability to focus on game development. id's next major title, published by Bethesda, would be Quake Live, an updated version of Quake 3 Arena, which originally released free-to-play with some content paywalled, eventually becoming a retail purchase-only title. Following this game is Rage, a first-person shooter franchise set in a post-asteroid crash Earth. Its console release was in 2011, with an iOS version releasing about a full year earlier in 2010. After Rage released, id would once again reboot the Doom franchise for release in 2016 as Doom. This title was originally announced as Doom 4 back in 2008, and considering the time between first announcement and its release and the positive reception that the game has enjoyed, it can be fairly classified as a title that has survived development hell, having at one point been scrapped altogether before being restarted and released fully. Doom VFR, an adaptation of Doom, was later released in 2017 for HTC Vive and PlayStation VR. What lies ahead for id Software are titles that are in the process of achieving full release. Rage 2 is complete and will be available for purchase this month. Quake Champions, the newest game in the Quake series, has been free-to-play since August of 2018 and was released as a Steam Early Access title in August of 2017, though id Software has made a point to emphasize that the game is still not yet a full-release title. Quake Champions is an esports-oriented game, the character-based design of which is comparable to games such as Overwatch and League of Legends. Doom Eternal was announced at E3 2018 and immediately drew lots of attention for just all around being the comfortably or uncomfortably edgy and familiar sort of title that people had come to expect from the Doom series. Doom Eternal is a sequel to Doom, and promises new gameplay modes and many more new demons, and will be supported with DLC post-launch. The future of the company, supported by a handful of their IPs being given much of their attention, seems stable, and Doom Eternal likely is garnering most of the hype amongst the soon-to-be-released titles. While all of the original founders of the company have departed, id Software's project should invite lots of attention both from fans and the developers working on it. Let us know which games from id Software you're looking forward to the most in the comment section below. And also, what do you think of Quake Champions as it competes in the difficult world of esports? As always, thanks for watching. And that about does it for this video. If you enjoyed what you watched and want to see more from GamingBolt, you can always hit that subscribe button and turn on the bell icon next to it. That way you will never miss any of our videos.